topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the host and their guests, and not those of W4CS Radio, its employees, or affiliates. W4CS makes no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening to the Cancer Support Network on W4CS.com.
Hi everyone, it's Aarti with Light Up Your Life, and today is Friday, November the 12th, and some of you will be tuning in later, so I just wanted to tell you we're already hitting November hard. Where I am in Virginia, we had daylight savings, and I know for many of us it has affected us so much. I know every year it seems like we go through these shifts in our bodies and in general around time, but especially right now, I think whenever we feel a shift in our body due to seasonal change or due to time change, as an example of us on the Eastern Coast, it does make a difference. And so I know for the families that I work with, it has really played a role with children getting up at different times. I can tell you I've been a little lethargic this week myself. That 1 hour does make a difference. And so it reminds me of time zone changes and time differences. And actually today's speaker is in a whole different time zone from India. And it was a difference also of 10 hours. And so always being mindful of how the presence of being in different spaces and times pulls at your energy and how you can feel different. I also want to take a minute to talk to you about self-care, because I myself am needing to take better care of myself. I had my yearly visit. I did not realize how much time had gone during COVID for my yearly visit. And I just want to remind you all, in addition to your regular blood panel, you can ask for a micronutrient panel of asking for a vitamin B12 check, vitamin D, vitamin E. Of course, iron is already on the comprehensive panel, but I encourage you to look at your other vitamins, and especially for men, magnesium is a great one to check, or especially around starting at ages 40 and up, because it does have a lot to do with your heart function. And I learned all of these tricks and trades through my own experience, and then, of course, just some of the nurses I've encountered, and when we look at things holistically. And so when we have a little bit of an imbalance, things can happen. So for instance, for me, my B12 was way off yesterday, I discovered. So I did some research last night, trying to figure out what I need to incorporate a little bit more into my diet but also what supplements are going to do good. Of course, I researched the hell out of everything, so I'm looking for the best ones. So just be mindful of when you are depleted of energy and when you might not be feeling good. You may actually be having that imbalance in your body, and data comes through getting really good results through our blood. And so I just want to remind you on that. And that is part of taking good self-care and preventative health, is really to be mindful of what's going on inside. So those of you who have had fear or haven't gone for your regular appointments during COVID, please go ahead and start scheduling your appointments, because many doctors' offices are extremely backed up. Just go ahead and make that call. If it's anything that I can encourage you to do, make that call for your preventative well check, or just your well check in general, getting that blood work done. And also, if you have, every age category that you're in, for instance, the mammograms, the colonoscopies, just really going ahead and scheduling with your doctor and getting you checked out. So now shifting gears, I'm really excited. Like I said, our speaker for today, our guest speaker, is actually from India, and his name is Sandeep Nath. And um, I want to remind you to always stay open to connections in the universe, because I actually, uh, Sandeep had reached out to me to ask me a question about an organization, and we just got started talking. I got to learn a little bit about his background, and I was so fascinated. And I asked him if he could come on, and we're also thinking about looking at some opportunities for some speaking engagements, because we both believe in this universe of really expansion. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with him, because his book called Renewalism looks at the fact of what can we do for environment while renewing our own mind, body, and spirit, but also taking care of our green space, so that our next generations and even us can live in a really more fruitful and great way. So today's title is called Renew, Revitalize, and Reenergize, Finding Ways to Ground in All Aspects of Life. Sandeep is an inner power and mindfulness coach. He's also a QiGong master instructor and a Reiki master. And I will also let him include much of his biography, because he has done such amazing international travel and work in speaking engagements is a big passion of his. And again, his book is playing a really great role in helping to save and look at the planet in different ways. Um, I am just so excited for this conversation, because I do, as we expand on how can we work on our own energy center, I think Sandeep's going to give us some really great tools. So welcome, Sandeep.
Hi, hello, viewers and listeners. Good to be here. Thank you, Arti. Lovely.
Thanks for
That's
being
a
here.
lovely reminder for everybody over the health checks. Please carry on.
Yes, because I was avoiding mine and I did, and now I'm like, okay, I need to start paying attention. So that I wanted to remind everyone, we're all on the same train. We all have to take care of ourselves in order for the greater train to keep going. Yes.
Absolutely.
So Sandeep, can you share with us just a basic background? I know you're in India. Can you tell us what part of India you're located? Can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and kind of this passion of, what fuels you, what brings you joy? And because when I look at stories, and I know when you look at stories, there's always this history of what got you to this present moment and choosing your passion, obviously, that you found.
Thank you, Arti. Absolutely. I so resonate with you when you say that the universe has this way of bringing things together. And I'm from Delhi, the capital of India, and I was born in Delhi, but brought up in various places till middle school when I came back to Delhi, and I've been here since then till the time I went to college, which was again outside. But post college, I spent a large part of my life in Hyderabad, and it was only about 11, 12 years ago that I came back to Delhi because my parents are here. So that's where you'd find me if you land at the capital of the country. But it's very interesting the way you asked about what brought me to do what I do, because that's where the universe kicked in a very big way. and and it was in around 2005 when I was in Hyderabad that I was running this consulting company and I was deeply stressed myself. Those of you who are entrepreneurs can relate with this. You've got these cash flows problems, you've got these cycles that you've got to run against, the credit cycles, and a whole lot of relationships to be built, a whole lot of networking to be done, a lot of whining and dining. And I was on that sort of hamster wheel.
Mhm.
And it wasn't giving me satisfaction, not only because of the dynamics of stress involved, but also because I was wondering what it is that we're doing as a human species to ourselves. It is us who's created the problem, which stresses us out. And doctors on the show would agree that about 80% why we go and see it is very much on pharmaceuticals and medication and hospitals, which in a sense is good because then we've seen how hospitals and the entire industry gets overburdened like it did during the last couple of years. And it's just not fair to cause so much stress to the doctors, nurses, and that entire profession because there is a lack of capacity, because we're not supposed to fall so sick. So that said, I started looking for answers. And that's what brings me here eventually. And that's also what brings about the book, Renewal, because we're talking about renewing ourselves to renew everything around us, to renew the planet. So that's how it goes, and we can talk more about this. But my journey went through the Himalayas. I spent time with Tibetan monks, understanding the secrets of our energy, stuff that we've known is everything, and how to use that because they're just experts in using energy. What you mentioned, QiGong, Qi is energy, and Gang is to work with it. And once you understand how that works, and I just heard in the introduction that you promised the listeners that they're going to experience some of it. So let's see how that goes. But once you do experience that, it's life changing. It's uh, it's getting hold of what we really are, what our true self is about. And once you understand what you are, you stop fooling yourself with all these entrapments around you. And by way of entrapments, I mean all the wining and dining and the cash flows and everything is kind of it just goes into a different orbit of our understanding of how we live. So as we start renewing, we start getting access to the next orbit, and that's so exciting.
That is
So
exciting.
that's kind of where I'm coming from.
That's awesome. Sandeep, can you talk a little bit about, you talked about the stress that you face. You also, I am bringing the pressure that is faced for so many when they enter a career, their chosen path or the path that is placed on them, and all the, when you kind of go deviate, how was that experience for you to not take, you had done all the studies, you'd gone through. How did that experience look, and how did it look to with friends and family? And you know, because a big part of the journey is now helping people to empower them to make very much decisions that resonate with them. And so I was just curious, and I'm sure our audience is curious how that looked for you.
Great. So it's like this. Um, there is a word you used, resonance, and what does that really mean? That means that there is a certain frequency at which we are vibrating. And if you agree with me, everything is energy. So your energy, so energy vibrates, right? So there is a vibe that's all around. And if you're vibrating in a manner that's in alignment with the way your environment is vibrating, then resonance is produced. You do a lot more. There is synergy in the environment. There is goodness happening for everybody and all concerned. But when that alignment's not happening, when those frequencies are interfering with each other, then we're going down. So how do we know how we're vibrating? Yeah. I guess that leads us to that question. And we vibrate with a word that is often not understood. The depth of it is not understood as much as it ought to be. The word purpose. So we vibrate with purpose. We are, you know, I remember in early social sciences, I read the statement man is a social animal. So man is a social animal, meaning that we live in societies, which is why we form these communities, we form these organizations and governments and clubs and little groups and even WhatsApp groups, let's say. But if any of these is formed without any purpose, even a WhatsApp group where you're not an alumni that's connecting together, or you're not connecting together to organize a particular event, or there's no nothing binding everybody together, there's no purpose, you wouldn't even find a useless WhatsApp forward coming into that group because nobody is engaged with it. There's no energy in that group. So from purpose comes the energy to do anything. How does that work, translate in our lives, in our day-to-day lives? The day you don't have purpose defined, like you don't have a meeting to go to, or a person to talk to, or a call to make, or an event to organize, or something special you want to cook, or a to-do list, or anything that you really, have to get up and start doing, that's the day when you don't have a purpose. That's the day you will feel, I think I'm going to just lie flat, do nothing. The entire energy that usually comes out in a working day goes for a toss. Have you experienced that?
Yes.
And that's the key. So if we are creatures working with energy, and that's what drives everything, that's what drives our vibrations, then it all comes from purpose. And now coming to the point about the youth, let me tell you my story. When I was in high school, I got into the Air Force, and I was really kicked about it because that's what I wanted to do, fly planes. My dad said, why don't you just finish your schooling? Because they take us in the defense forces 1 year before you finish schooling. So he said, just finish the next year and then write the engineering exam. If you don't get through, you can always get into the forces again. And like an obedient son, I did what he suggested. And I got into engineering, and I haven't flown a plane ever since. Ever, never, never. What happened? What happened to me in engineering is that around the third year of engineering, I got myself glasses. Okay, so I was diagnosed with astigmatism. To me, that felt good because I started looking like a more serious person than I was, and it's good to look serious as an engineer. But it was 21 years later, I think, when I was about 37. Yeah, about 20 years later, I read a book by Louis Hay. It's called You Can Heal Your Life, or I think it's just Heal Your Life, something like that. And she had this condition called astigmatism in her list of conditions that can be reversed or cured or healed. You can heal your life with affirmations. And with a lot of trial and error, I understood how affirmations actually work. And I applied that. So, in about a year, which is why I was about 38 at the time, I was able to remove my glasses. Now, why am I telling you this story? I haven't worn my glasses since, no surgery, nothing. I'm telling you all this because I had a purpose in my mind to fly. Now, the way I've diagnosed this after reading the book, and I will share with you the mind-body connection that healed me and that causes astigmatism. The affirmation that she says, I will not forget, obviously, because it's burned under my eyelids. It is, I am now open to see my own beauty and magnificence. Somewhere in that competitive environment of engineering college, this guy who didn't want to be an engineer at all got overwhelmed, stressed. He didn't know that that word exists. Overwhelmed because of lack of purpose. And that's why I've never done engineering thereafter. I moved into marketing, advertising, and consulting. And that lack of purpose put down my self image of beauty and magnificence. It manifested in my eyes as an astigmatic error. which the eye doctors told me is for life. It's a corneal defect. It cannot be rectified. You got to wear these glasses 24/7. And here I am. So when we're off purpose, we're not resonating. When we're not resonating, we are starting to get stressed without even realizing. It doesn't look like stress. It looked great. Like I told you, I felt like a serious engineer. Even as a consultant with glasses, people took me more seriously. I was wishing I get my hair gray fast. And it just suits the image of a consultant. But when this happened, and those were the years that when I was in my mid 30s, that I started discovering spirituality and started discovering answers to purpose and consciousness. And then by the time I was about 40, I went to the Himalayas. That is so very critical. So if you're just joining the workforce or getting out of school, you've got to understand this, that for the next 15 years, you're going to be stressed and not even realize that you're stressed, because that's just the trade-off that you're making in your mind for success. And what is success? Success is actually using your natural eyes at 53 and feeling younger every day. And in fact, that you brought that up, it came to my mind that in October every year I get my annual health checks done. And Arti, I got my reports last month. Like every other year for the last 15 years, all the parameters are absolutely stable. No change. So that's what energy does for you. That's what purpose does for you, because purpose gives you energy. And that's what I recommend everybody have. And I'm very happy to get onto a conversation with any of our listeners if they'd like to explore how to identify purpose.
Yes, because I was going to say it's such a deep topic, purpose, right? Purposeful living, purpose. Um, and and I just love what you talked about when you have those physical manifestations in your body. With you, it's the the astigmatism and how it manifested, how physical stress comes with that emotional toll in the body. It's just amazing how our body works, right? Like it's just such a beautiful beast of a being. And you kind of reminded me of that when you gave that example, and the power of healing. And I love Louise Hay's work. So when you bring up the power, I just love her work so much, and all of her affirmations and what they. So those of you who don't know about her work, she has a whole publishing company too. It's just amazing. So thank you for bringing that up. Sandeep, let's go into some of the great experiences. Like you have traveled the world. I mean, for your experience with the Himalayas and the time with the Tibetan Buddhist monks, like what are some of the lessons, like those highlight lessons that you feel someone who's beginning this journey, what are some of the things you'd like to share?
What a lovely question. If you're just exploring what differentiates, let's say, successful people and not successful people, you're asking the same questions that I was asking 15 years ago. Because when I was so stressed, I was wondering if I'm to grow this company, and one always looks up to the billionaires of the world. They're about 20,000 times my size, and they couldn't be having 20,000 times the amount of stress I have. So that's not humanly possible. So what do they know? And then I looked at these spiritual masters, the Mother Teresa's, the Gandhis, the Nelson Mandelas, and they have so much responsibility. They have so much that they're doing. What do they do so that despite the fact that Mother Teresa is going over to leper colonies, highly contagious and all that stuff, she doesn't seem to be physically stressed or mentally stressed. She's just going about doing something on purpose. Gandhi is on purpose. All that comes from there. So that's what I discovered, that the one of the core tenets to success is identifying what is driving you, what is the purpose, and discovering that is, like I said, where my Vedic gurus, Tibetan lamas, Chinese and Japanese Oriental masters, their inputs came in very handy. Because you will never find purpose from something outside of you. You will always find purpose inside. So discovering what's inside and having the patience and the guidance, because you have the ability, but you don't know you have the ability. So having the guidance to be able to go within and know what to look for and how, that's what I call inner power. And giving rise to that inner power and having that convert into what you are here for, what you're here to do, is paramount. So if you're looking for what to do to get started on this journey, where does this journey go? Do I have to sit in Tibetan monasteries to accomplish anything? No, you can't be sitting where you are, taking the right kind of guidance over maybe a Zoom call, but doing the work within. Nothing outside. You don't have to catch a flight to go anywhere at all. It's all here. Tapping into that inner power is what's going to give you the answers. And those answers are what are going to manifest into the physicalities, physical things, like you said, Arti. And you're going to do stuff. And then when you start doing stuff, you start fine tuning what you're doing, because you may be doing a lot of stuff and overwhelming yourself as a consequence. So you're going to see what's the right stuff, what's the stuff that's getting me the right results. And again, that's where a mentor, a guide, a coach helps. And once you get to that sweet spot where the right stuff gives you the right results, you are moving along completely stress free with purpose, and therefore having nice medical reports, looking younger, feeling great, and meeting incredible people as the universe gets us to, like you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's so much of what you said resonated, because why I love coaching is because it is that relationship of the person going inward, which you talked about, you being an inner power coach. The fact that you've reminded everyone we don't have to go anywhere. We're always seeking external. That's just an added bonus, right? Once you get to develop and look inside your own temple. But I think what I'm reminded of is the fact that you are consistently, you have to come back to yourself for that piece. But then all of our ancestors did have gurus, and like even in our indigenous Native American population here, they had that spiritual master that was the chief, right? And you're bringing up the Tibetan monks. There's all of these examples. We have our Dalai Lama, right? There's always some need. And I think in our American culture here, we have become so focused on trying to solve it ourselves, and it's not working. And so I want to remind everyone that having someone in your corner, such as a coach or mentor, like Sandeep is talking about, is going to help rise that inner power, because all they're doing is helping to evoke that.
That's right. It's like, you need the light to be able to find what you're looking for inside. And the coach does that job of holding the flashlight for you while you use both your hands to dig. So
That is
kind
a
of
great analogy. No, that's a great analogy. The
crudely put, but
flashlight.
I can visualize that. I hope you listeners can.
I hope so too. That is a great analogy. It's because no one will know ourselves best. It's almost like anyone who's in a relationship or gets into it, we always want that person to know us best. And then we have expectations, right? We want them to know us like no other. You should know exactly what I want at all times, or whatever the conception is. But truly, it is the mastermind of us being our own mastermind but helping that I love that flashlight analogy of helping to look in. That's really powerful. Totally. Okay, Sandeep, talk about your awesome book, because the more and more I go on my journey, everything to me is about looking and how can we actually environmentally sustain, because we already know that global warming is for real, because if no one believes it at this point, I'm just wondering what is happening to you. But so we do know climate change is real. We know that we cannot sustain the way that we're going. Clearly, when many parts of the world, when COVID hit, got to see clean air for the first time in many, many years. Many
Delhi too.
years, right? Yes. So tell us the vision behind this book. How did this come to be? And then if you can share a couple highlights of how you're helping to do that renewal of spirit and renewal of environment.
Wonderful. So this book, it's got my name on it. Here it is. But I'm not the person who actually wrote it. This was divinely channeled to me. And it was in November of 2019. I was in Mexico, and we had a couple of months, lean months, where we were just chilling out, my wife and I. And I got this urge to start writing. I've been having this thought that, what I would like to do is correlate our habits, the stuff that we do physically, with our consciousness, which is the the energy part of the spirit part of us. And if we can do things physically which change our energy, which help elevate our energy, keep us in states of high energy, and that means higher consciousness, higher happiness, higher bliss, higher love, we are kind of sorted as a species, right? So suddenly one day I got this feeling that, okay, this is the day I start writing. And I started writing, and I continued writing for about 3-4 hours a day for the next 40 days. And by the end of December, this 240-page book was ready. I was back in India around in Feb, early March, just before the lockdowns. And I was editing. I was traveling a bit in the meanwhile editing. And that's when early March, it started becoming evident that this pandemic, it was not named the pandemic then, but this thing is serious, and it's going to have us relook at the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. Now guys, what's the one word for things that we do on a day-to-day basis? Habits. So I said, I've got to bring this book out, because for some reason this book, I had no idea what I was writing the next minute. Okay, no plans for what's to be written the next day, what are the habits. So it's about a lot of habits, but it just flowed, and it structured itself into 3 compartments. And I'll talk to you about them a little later. And I got this feeling in March, April, that this book has to be brought out before we regress to our old habits, because what this COVID thing is teaching us is to be more mindful. And mindfulness is the key to change habits, to know that we have a habit. Otherwise, we're just driven like automatons, habitually doing something physically. But when we know that, okay, we are doing this physically, but we've got to change doing it. We've got to start washing the hands every time we touch somebody or something. We've got to put the mask out the moment we get into an elevator. That's a habit switch. Now, if we can be mindful about these 2-3 things, physical distancing and stuff like that, maybe we can start exercising our mindfulness muscle to be more mindful about what we consume, about how much we consume, not just what goes inside us, but around us, how much power we consume, how much water we consume, and so on and so forth, which is all to do with a renewed way of how we look at our interaction with our ecosystem, with our planet. And that's why the book came out in June last year. And it got some very good reviews all through the year. Around August, we had Dr. Yang Ming, who is Hall of Fame Qigong Grandmaster, also mentor to me. And he presented me with a foreword. So we brought that out in the second edition, which was just flashed on the screen a little while ago. And I still have the first edition over here. It doesn't have the second label. It doesn't have the forward. But I'm so indebted to Dr. Yang for what he wrote. And it's a kind of guide map for how we could live to be aligned, purposeful, and stress free. That's what I call self renewal. So if you adopt the self renewal habits, you would be supercharged, whether it's 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. You talked about time zones and all that when you started this edition. It really doesn't matter. Like for me, what's the time now? It's like 10 p.m. But I would be the same at 10 a.m. And that's because you learn how to replenish your energies. You learn how to work with nature. And you don't do much. You just understand that there are certain things which are to be done, like a bath. It's not a lot of logical explanation that your mom gives you about having a bath. You just get into that, and before you've realized it, it's become a habit that served you all your life. So we take on habits very easily. This whole mask habit and stuff like that happened in a matter of a few weeks for everybody, right? So it's only a limiting belief if we have that belief that, oh, habits are difficult to make or break. They're extremely simple. Anybody who thinks that they're difficult and gives you 66 days or 21 days or blah, 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 10,000 hours is just selling something to you. But you go by your own experience through your own inner power and realize that this stuff is the way to be. Now, if you go through those practices of self renewal, then you would also become more pliable to what I call symbiotic renewal, which is the second section. And that's our symbiotic relationships with other people, with everything else. Everything is energy. So, how do we relate with everything else? It could be money, it could be careers, it could be social relationships, it could be our vocations, it could be anything. And it could be the environment, and it could be the planet, and it could be the way that we fulfill our job function or our business, and how we can just relook at that and renew that so that we are in the next orbit of fulfillment in each of those dimensions of life. And that done, we could also start looking at the bigger picture, which is the systems that we have. So that's called systemic renewal. And the systems, after all, have been made, all policies have been written by people. So it takes a person and the way that that person is ultimately thinking, ultimately because there could be a committee thinking for him or her, but ultimately it's a decision maker who signs off on that policy document, and suddenly emissions are going crazy or whatever, all those things are happening. It's not just about the environment, it's also about corruption, it's also about schooling, it's also about telecommuting. So that was what was interesting, that in November 2019 there were habits about telecommuting and online schooling which had been written by Guru Pranachandra. That's the name of the character who identified himself and was the energy form that wrote that book. So Guru Pranachandra talked about these things which were becoming realities by March 2020. And those are habits. That's stuff you and I do. And like you rightly said, and we've seen that happen in Delhi, we've seen that happen all over the world. The air got cleaner as the vehicles went off the road, and it was each of us individuals who did that. So it's your unexpected role in saving the planet. That's what renewal is about. Through these three segments of self renewal, symbiotic renewal, and systemic renewal.
Yeah, you're reminding. I mean, I always tell our children how much power we hold as humans. We can either make or break. We can either make or break this planet, and it's true. And I think your stacking model of saying how it starts with the self and then the symbiotic like relationship, how we all hold these relationships and what we can do. And it's not a matter. I was listening, they have commercials on YouTube, and something was said about solar panels, and they were talking about it's not about it being political. It's not talking about this or that. And I think a lot of our environmental conversation has become so politicized. I'm sure you agree with me, Sandeep, right? It's become
I
such a
do.
political arena. Yet, if we actually start to look back at the cellular level with ourselves on our own consumption, like you're talking about, that's what's going to do that uh, tunnel. What do you call it? Funnel? Yes, the funnel effect to the top. So you
Correct.
100%. I think when you talk about renewing your spirit and yourself, that is the true way. And I love that you're bringing up consumption. This whole week, I was doing, I of course believe in mindfulness, but I really, excuse me, I'm doing more in my practice. And I realized I was also addicted to my phone. Like it's constantly checking, constantly. And now I leave it. And if I have one piece of technology, I try to leave the other one, because we're getting it's too much. So you have to be mindful of everything that you're taking into your body, right? Like you mentioned earlier, but also what is around you. What is in your physical space? What is in your feng shui area, right?
Correct. Correct. What all are you wearing? So all these concepts of minimalism and a lot of this stuff, decluttering, all that comes into these habits. And Guru Pranachandra just guides you in a very simple way of how to actually execute them. And once you start executing them one by one, you get more and more energy, because if nothing else, you're aligned with that purpose of fulfilling a little role in saving the planet.
Yes, totally. Sandeep, a lot of people don't actually, everyone's getting in, becoming more and more interested in so much of energy work. Can you actually tell us about Qigong and what it is and what it means and your experience with it?
Sure. So my tryst with Qigong started with a little bit of online research initially around 2010. And then when I went, in fact, I went to the monasteries to actually understand what the Tibetans know, because this has been closely guarded in China. And it's not that um, the Chinese, I mean, they were just so closed as a society. So it's not that they wanted to keep it to themselves, but it just stayed there. So with the Tibetans moving to India, a lot of it came here, and with the Chinese moving out to US, it started getting popular in the Western world as well. But what it is two words: Chi, meaning life force energy, what drives everyone and everything, and Gang, meaning to work with. So it's going back 4 or 5 thousand years to the fundamentals of working with energy. And when you work with energy, you are able to harness the universality of this energy for you at a body, mind, and spirit level. So you could apply it at a body level for healing. You could apply it at a mind level for, again, mental and emotional healing, but also for creating the right relationships, the right vibes, your relationship with money, for instance, and all that sort of stuff. And it is a form of spirit because it is your divine connection to the greater force. And we need not have any label to the force, but as long as we understand that there is some greater force, which is divine energy. So working with the chi is what qigong is about, and because it's such a ancient practice, there are many forms of it. But essentially, there are there are three things that are fundamental, which are present, whatever the form might be, and that is the alignment of the body, the mind, and the spirit. The body through the way we move, the mind through our respiration, our breathing, because you follow that with your mind and you tame the mind with it, and the spirit with the visualization of energies and how we are interplaying with them. So once your body, mind, spirit are in alignment, there is no stress, there is fluidity within and fluidity without. So you actually connect your inner power with the divine power, and a lot of manifestation is possible. Like you said, I have been traveling the world, and in spite of that, I say that it's all within, because nothing is out there. It's just I had this desire to reach out to people, and that manifested, and
Mhm.
you manifest abundance. So here we are talking to people across the world through your radio station in the US. And this is just manifested through uh, a conversation, like you said in the introduction, which was so small compared to what we might be doing with this show.
That's right.
That's Qigong.
I love the magnificence of energy and energy flow so much. And I'm so glad that because once we bring up concepts, then people, like you said, they'll want to research and look at things.
I
So,
hope so.
Sandeep, before we wrap up for today, where can people find a copy of your book? Where can they look you up and all that great jazz?
So I'll share two links. One is renewalism.com, which is
Mhm.
also behind me, but may not be visible very much. And the other is sandeepnath.com, which is a little larger and might be visible. Do connect with me on WhatsApp or any of the social media on the top right corner of my site, sandeepnath.com. And do look up renewalism.com, not only to read up the preface of the book and a lot of interesting stuff that we have out there, a lot of reviews, but also to get access to the book in its PDF form at any price you want. 0.00 is where we start. So happy to give you a free copy. And you could also find all the links to all the leading online portals over there. So if you want a physical copy, you could just go to renewalism.com and then pick it up through that. Thank you.
Awesome. Sandeep, thank you for the gift of your time. Appreciate it so much.
I really thank you for inviting me here and having all your listeners absorb what we've been talking about. And like you said, research more of it, apply a bit of it, and love to hear how your story goes.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And like anything, hold your space with love and light. And just remember, take the journey slow and easy, but there's so much beauty in the journey. Have a good week, everyone.